The victim's clock was frozen at 2007. Last night mine did the same thing. There's a silence in this city that eats people, and I think it's starting to get hungry again. My name is Kazimir Volkov. I'm a detective. That word probably paints a picture for you. Some noir fantasy of whiskey and shadows. The reality is lukewarm coffee and the smell of decomposing evidence bags. I solve the city's mundane brutalities. Husbands and wives, dealers and debts, the usual stuff. But this is different. This isn't a case, it's a haunting. It started with Linnea Morgenstern, a 22-year-old art student who lived in one of those pre-war walk-ups downtown that always smell faintly of damp history and bleach. She just stopped. Her phone went dead, her socials went dark, her professors filed a report. On paper, it looked like she'd just walked away. No forced entry, no struggle. Her apartment was clean, almost sterile, like a museum exhibit of a life. But some crime scenes don't scream, they whisper. And this one was whispering something awful. Behind her bed, the drywall was disturbed. It wasn't a clean cut. It looked like something had been gnawed out from the inside. A ragged, weeping hole the size of a shoebox. The plaster was crumbled, the insulation pulled apart like cotton candy. I shined my maglite inside, half expecting a rat's nest, but I found something else. Wedged deep in the yellow fiberglass, something glinted. I pulled it out with my tweezers. It was a tooth. A human molar, with a tiny silver filling that caught the light. I bagged it, tagged it. I felt that old familiar burn in my gut, the one that says, you've got the first thread of a very ugly sweater. Forensics confirmed it a day later. The tooth was Linnea's. That should have been the break. Instead, it was the end. I went to pull the evidence bag for a secondary review, and it was gone. Not misplaced. Vanished. The logbook was clean, my signature still there, but the plastic bag with that single, lonely tooth had ceased to exist. My lieutenant, a man named Corbin, whose soul had been replaced by departmental policy, called me into his office. He didn't meet my eyes. He just stared at the skyline while he spoke. The Morgenstern case is closed, Kaz, he said. She's a transient. It's a non-criminal matter. Sir, I found her tooth. Inside her tooth. Inside her wall. He finally looked at me, and his eyes were as empty as a cleared-out apartment. Some holes are better left alone. You understand? It wasn't a question. 2 weeks later, another girl. Sloane Finch. Same age, same neighborhood, same kind of life packed into the same kind of old building. Another file that read like a ghost story. And when I got to her place, I found it. A cheap plastic wall clock in the kitchen. The kind you win at a carnival. The glass was cracked and the hands were frozen. 2:17. It was just a detail, probably meaningless, but it snagged on my brain. I remembered seeing a similar clock in Linnea's apartment, but I hadn't thought anything of it. I leaned closer to the clock on Sloane's wall. The second hand was bent at a perfect 90-degree angle, pointing straight down. Not broken, positioned, like a signpost. And as I watched, it happened. A single dry click. The minute hand shuddered, scraping against the cracked glass as it tried to move. The sound was like bone grinding on stone. I felt a cold dread pour down my spine. The kind of instinctual fear that tells you you're not the predator in the room. I left. I didn't run, but every step out of that building felt like I was pulling my feet out of wet cement. This is where it gets bad. This is where the story stops being about them and starts being about me. I used a personal day to go back to Linnea's apartment. The landlord had already listed it, but it was still empty. I let myself in with my old key, the air inside stale and silent. I went straight to the bedroom. The hole was bigger. Much bigger now, wide enough for a person to crawl through. The edges looked fresh, still shedding a fine white powder onto the floorboards. I stood there, listening to my own heartbeat thumping in my ears. And then I heard it. A soft, rhythmic sound. Tap. 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 It was coming from inside the wall. My hand was on my service weapon. Old habit. "Police," I called out, my voice sounding thin and stupid in the empty room. The tapping stopped. The silence that followed was heavy, watchful. Then, a whisper. It slithered out of the hole, a dry, papery sound. It sounded impossibly, horrifically, like my wife's voice. "She died 5 years ago." "You're late, Kaz. I didn't shoot. I didn't scream. I just backed away, out of the room, out of the apartment, and didn't stop until I was in my car with the doors locked." I sat there for an hour, shaking, watching the building's entrance like I expected the walls themselves to come crawling out after me. I started digging, off the books. The girls both rented from a shell company called Athel Properties. No address, no phone number, just a post office box in a town that didn't exist. I tracked down the landlord, a greasy weasel of a man named Marek. He had teeth stained the color of old nicotine and eyes that knew too much. When I pressed him about the disappearances, he just smiled. "Building's settled, detective. People move on. Some tenants are transitional time." That word again. It started to follow me. Every pawn shop I passed had a broken clock in the window. 2:17. I'd see them at flea markets, in dumpsters, their plastic faces cracked like skulls. The city felt wrong, tilted. I'd walk down streets I've known my whole life and feel like a stranger. The geography of my own city was rewriting itself around me. Then they came for my quiet. I got an email from an anonymous address. No subject, just a single audio file attached. I almost deleted it. I wish to God I had. I clicked play. It was the sound of me sleeping. The low, rumbling snore I've been told I have. But underneath it was another sound, a faint, dry scraping, like fingernails dragging slowly across wood. It sounded like it was right next to the microphone. The file name was a string of numbers. A timestamp, 02/17/42. I live alone. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room with my gun on my lap and listened to the sounds of my own home. I heard every creak of the pipes, every groan of the foundation. They weren't normal house sounds anymore. They were movements. The next morning, a small package was on my doorstep. No postage. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a little wooden bird, clumsily carved. The kind my daughter used to make for me when she was small. It was stained with something dark and sticky that smelled like rust. Tucked underneath was a folded piece of paper. In shaky block letters, it read, "IT isn't ME. It's the timber." I went cold. I dropped the bird and ran back inside. In the bathroom, I found it. A fine white powder, almost invisible, coating the bristles of my toothbrush. Plaster dust. I went to my bedroom, the wall behind my headboard. I pressed my hand against it. It felt soft, spongy, like scar tissue. I pushed harder, and my fingers sank into the drywall about half an inch. A faint, wet sigh came from the other side. I spent the next 2 days tracking Marek. I followed him from his shithole apartment to a grimy storage facility out by the old rail yard. I waited until he left, then I picked the lock on his unit. The smell hit me first. Mold, decay, and something else. Something metallic and sweet. The place was cavernous, and it was filled with clocks. Hundreds, maybe thousands of them, stacked on shelves, piled in corners. All of them dead, all of them showing 217. And in the center of the room were pallets stacked with squares of drywall. Each one was labeled with an address. Each one had those same frantic scratches in the exposed insulation. But that wasn't what made me want to vomit. In the middle of it all was a child's rocking chair. A little wooden one with a faded blue horse painted on the headrest. My rocking chair, from when I was a boy. The one that was supposed to be in my mother's attic, 200 miles away. Sitting on the chair was a framed photo of me and my wife on our wedding day. The glass was spiderwebbed with cracks. I picked it up, my hands trembling. In the reflection on the shattered glass, I could see a shape, a tall, distorted figure standing just behind our smiling selves. I turned the photo over. A piece of paper was taped to the back. It was a list of names. Linnea Morgenstern, Sloane Finch, dozens of others I didn't know, and at the bottom, the ink still looking wet, was my own name. Kazimir Volkov, followed by a single, elegant question mark. As my fingers brushed the paper, the huge roll-up door of the unit started to slam down with a deafening crash. I didn't think. I just dove, sliding under the heavy metal door as it slammed into the concrete, scraping my back raw. I scrambled to my feet and ran. I ran until my lungs were on fire and the lights of the city were a sick, blurry smear. I'm in a motel now, 100 miles away. I know it won't matter. The walls here feel thin. The cheap painting of a ship is screwed to the wall, but I swear I can hear a soft tapping from behind it. The digital clock on the nightstand keeps flickering. It's been stuck on 2:16 for the last 10 minutes, the numbers twitching, fighting to tick over. They didn't just vanish, they were archived. Stored in the dead spaces between rooms, in the silence between seconds. I should have listened to Corbin. I should have left the hole alone. But I'm writing this for a reason. Not just to warn you. I'm writing this because I'm done running. I have the photo. I have the list. I'm going back. I don't know what lives in the timber and the plaster, but it made this personal. It took their names, and then it took mine. It reached back into my life and took my memories too. I'm gonna find the heart of it. Maybe it's Marek. Maybe it's the buildings. Maybe it's time itself. I don't know if I can kill it, but I know I can't just let it chew, so listen to me. Pay attention to the quiet in your own homes. Check the clocks. And if you ever wake up in the dead of night and the time is 2:17, for the love of God, don't look at your walls. Get out. Run. The silence is just the sound of it getting ready for its next meal.